So I just found out about this yesterday, but this is something that's very near and dear to my heart. This is how I came into cryptocurrency and into Ciphertrace, was through something called the Defenders League. So the Defenders League was launched in early 2020, just prior to COVID. And the idea is that we take budding financial crimes investigators and we teach them how to trace cryptocurrency, right? And write reports for law enforcement and for victims. We did open up a website. It was not published, though. It was something that you would have to Google and kind of find on your own. And we had that open for maybe 6 months or 9 months, where someone could log in if they were a victim, fill out a form, and then that would go through our automatic process into our HubSpot. We were inundated with requests, over 4,000. And so we had to pause that completely because we just did not have the people to help address all of those cases. But I'll talk more about that and lessons learned here. So here it is. Defenders League is an all-volunteer program, or was an all-volunteer program. At the time, we worked with several universities, including my university, Middlebury Institute of International Studies in Monterey. The goal here, I think, really is like threefold. Something I learned throughout this process is that people who lose like under $500,000, right? You can report that to IC3, and we definitely have people who come to us as victims of cryptocurrency fraud, theft, exploitation, all of the above, investment scams, right? Report to FBI's IC3 website. That said, people, you're not going to get a response from them like 99.9% of the time. I think one time the FBI reached out regarding a case, and they were looking for other typologies really similar to the thing that they were looking at. But otherwise, you're not likely to hear back. And in early 2020, and throughout 2021, and most of 2022, until kind of recently, when pig butchering sort of like came to the forefront of everyone's knowledge and understanding, and I'll go into that a little bit later, but there's not much support out there, and that's for a multitude of reasons, right? At the time, law enforcement weren't trained. They're getting trained. We're in the process of training them. And they're assigning people in there. If they have a thin crimes division, usually assign one person to cryptocurrency. That said, that person is assigned to it doesn't mean that they're necessarily interested or have the aptitude to do it or want to do it. And they have, lots of cases as well. So I can complain about having 4,000 cases and how that really swamped us. They have just as many cases on their plate as well, right? So they're doing their best. And then in addition to that, we also had to have a prosecutor buy-in, and that was very difficult to do at the time. Prosecutors just did not see the benefit in going after, and this is based in the US as well, and I'll speak abroad too. But in the US, prosecutors, unless the case, was around the $500,000 mark or so, weren't really interested in picking up the case at this time, during this time frame. So that was difficult. Outside of the United States, we found a lot more success within the UK, within France, within South Africa, a few other countries, in that their local law enforcement would pick up the case. They would give this to the prosecutor, and the prosecutors would take the case. They would also have legal support. So we found in successful cases, it really was a three-pillar approach. We had to have a cryptocurrency investigator, right? That could be myself, right? Someone like me, or that could also be law enforcement. We had to have law enforcement, right? Because they have to write the subpoenas, and then usually legal representation to help push this through. At the time, most exchanges did not have, although they might have like a law enforcement dedicated or intelligence dedicated arm, there really wasn't like a form law enforcement could fill out. So it was really trying to go through and figure out through the compliance people, like who was the right one to talk to. And sometimes that could take a while at these exchanges. Things are better and smoother now. Most exchanges have a formal process in place. So it's definitely much better now than it was. Another reason we had this program was it was a marketing arm, right? We wanted to market our UTXO-based tracing tool, which is Inspector, to universities and students studying fin crimes and cyber crimes. So again, this is not a pitch, but this was part of our drive in creating this program. We also were going to obtain a lot of attribution data. Now, as it turns out, that ended up being way too much data for us to go through. It took about a year or so to go through all of that data and be able to confirm that someone was indeed scammed, right? Because again, for a time, this was a form that a person could fill out, and they could fill it out multiple times. We found like gaps in the way that we designed our form as well, and the website as a whole. So we had to go through and really like carefully curate all of the data. That this took about a year to do. But we wanted to analyze trends, right? We wanted to understand the types of crimes we were seeing. We wanted to identify patterns. So if indeed we saw a pattern emerge, we could actually alert law enforcement or federal and say, hey, you know what, ICE or Secret Service, I think you want to take this group, 50 or 100 cases, because in total, this is about $2 or $3 million, but it's all the same scam typology, right? So that was also part of the goal here. And then we also wanted to have a network of educated and fully trained investigators across government agencies, financial institutions. We wanted them to become the primaries at those places, and the experts and the lead educators as well. As we know, in this space is growing so fast. We're getting better at education, but we need so much more education, right? And so that's the goal there as well. So some of the methods we did here was we would train students to identify the source of funds in a cryptocurrency trace. We would teach them how to trace so backwards and forwards on the blockchain. We would teach them how to write a proper brief or full report based upon their findings and submit that to law enforcement. Oftentimes, law enforcement, because they were not familiar with the terms, definitions, the jargon really of this field, we would help them write their subpoenas as well. So we would provide that support. And then of course, victims would have actionable intelligence in the best case, so they could get legal and law enforcement support, again, which is a critical component of recovery. Cool, okay. Let's see, so some of the results from this, we've trained over 100 student volunteers, 4 university partners, again, over 4,000 cases and over 100,000 US dollars recovered. I will say recovery is still rare in this space. So it's important to understand that we're not pitching ourselves as a recovery arm or nonprofit. This was to get actionable intelligence to help somebody understand where their money went. Anything else from there, it was just very difficult to recover, again, because you needed legal support, law enforcement support, and for the most part, for people losing under $500,000, but especially within the like under $100,000 range or even $50,000 range, it doesn't really make sense to pay for help in that case. So again, this was a volunteer program. Volunteers were not paid, victims were not charged. And the goal was to get the victim actionable intelligence and to do all of the other things, accomplish all of the other goals, as I mentioned. So within our, February to September of 2021. So within that, we found the majority of lost currency type, but this scams, fraud, everything, was about 46% in Bitcoin, which is not that surprising. But ETH took up a good chunk, and then other currency types as well. So this really stretched us as investigators, and this is where sort of I built my chops, because I had a tool that did Bitcoin and ETH. I use Etherscan for ERC20 tokens. In 2021, we were starting to see a lot of the NFT stuff come through, but I would get Doge requests. I would get requests for a lot of altcoins that I had never traced before, and I would just have to figure out how to do it, or how to find a bridge, or some other public block explorer to help me accomplish my goals and figure out actually where the money went. So this really stretched us, and I can say now that for the team members who are still here, we're really good at learning how to trace, something we've never seen before, because we've just had to do it so many times. You can see where the funds were sent from. So this is the victim actually sending funds into a scam. And that was part of the questionnaire that we would ask people in the beginning. Where did you send your money from? Did you send it from an exchange? Were you holding the cryptocurrency? Were you self-custodying yourself, or did you go through a different payment provider or peer-to-peer, or what was it? What was the platform? So for the most part, right, we saw private wallets. So people were self-custodying their cryptocurrency. And what we did notice was these exploits or hacks, or a lot of it was phishing, and then definitely investment scams were coming out of people's, as I recall, Trust Wallet and MetaMask primarily during this time frame, which again makes sense with what was available at the time. So for scam types, we have other, just kind of a collection, or we're really not sure how to define those scam types. We kind of threw it in this other bucket. We did get some ransomware, but typically for ransomware cases, it's quite rare to get them through Defenders League. Most people are going to immediately seek legal support. They probably won't self-report because there might be some sanctions exposure there, right? So they're going to get a lawyer. They'll have an incident response firm to go through that will probably offer like a package of legal support and negotiation and all of that. So we'll get those requests typically from an incident response firm. So not too much ransomware in there. The hacked private wallet, this would include people who were phished, right? So a lot of people said they were hacked. When you actually dig into it, pretty soon you can see they either clicked on like a malicious domain, or they entered in their seed phrase in some website or something like that. So social media scams, if you guys were around in the 2020, 2021, you remember like the Twitter hack, you remember all of the doubler scams. Those were really, really, really big. I say back then, it wasn't that long ago, but in crypto dog years, yeah, I guess it was. Investment scams are going to include your romance scams. I have a separate slide for that. And then we did have a few extortion cases as well. So total losses in US dollars per victim, you can see the majority of people, right, or just about half of the cases that we did have were in the $1,000 to $10,000 range. And this is important to understand for kind of how the US system works. It's really difficult unless you can aggregate data across a bunch of, with a bunch of victims for certain scam typologies to get law enforcement and prosecutor buy-in for those. It's really hard, right? Typically, no one's going to go after a case where someone's lost $10,000. Now in Canada and France, they will, right? In the UK, they probably will as well. If law enforcement determines that this fraud is worth chasing down, they'll chase it down and they'll give that to the prosecutor. It's different here in the US. So this is something that I found quite frustrating because, you know, as we all understand, we all pay taxes, right? Yet the folks who are wealthy and are able to lose, you know, the $500,000 and more, once you hit at least $1 million in losses, those are the people that get the support, and they can also pay for the support. So yeah, I'm not sure how to, I can't really tie that up and make it neat. It's frustrating, and it's a reality of this space. So I love to share this slide with people. And then you can see, we did have some people over 2 million, some in the $500,000 to $2 million range. Those would get immediate law enforcement support. They would they stumble over themselves to help in those cases, right? 100 to 500K, it depends. And then but typically 500K and under, it's harder to get that support in the US. That said, I hope things are changing. I think things are changing for the better. But I do like to share those stats. So it's kind of on the forefront of everyone's mind when we're talking about theft and exploits and scams and stuff. And you hear these big numbers in the media. Yeah, those numbers matter. And it's all significant, right? But keep in mind the folks that lose less, have less. You know, typically it was someone lost their parents' investment. They would lose homes, cars, relationships would fall apart. In some cases, people were suicidal. Like this dramatically affected people's lives. I guess I cannot understate that enough. Romance scams, I think, are particularly like malicious. And you've probably heard now of the term pig butchering. This is called 杀猪盘, originating in mainland China. So that's a Mandarin term. It essentially means it's like a call center. It's something originally where like students or interns could kind of sign up. And if you were like, 20 and under or something, you're still in school, you could go through these kind of like organizations and you would get a cut of whatever you were able to extract from your target. So most people in these romance scams and pig butchering scams tend to meet their exploiters online, like usually via Tinder, right? So I worked a Tinder case myself. Meet someone on Tinder or some other dating app. They're going to move them then to like Telegram or WhatsApp. And then from there, the conversation continues. This person will, the target will receive, multiple messages a day. They'll get very close or feel like they've gotten very close to their exploiter. Now, again, this isn't just one person. This is like kind of like a call center setup. So it's really a lot of people participating with multiple persons who are being victimized. And so you're going to get messages in the middle of the night or whenever, and ultimately they're going to say, hey, can you invest in my father's company? Or I founded this company, or there's some story there where you're going to want to invest your funds. And at that point in time, you have this maybe emotional connection and certainly trust built in this relationship. And then from that, that's where the butchering, this is why it's called pig butchering, sort of comes. The person is sort of fattened up, and then ultimately they're going to extract as much value from that person as they can. Oftentimes in these scams, people will go to their family members and friends to ask for help to send money to these people. So it's just a nasty business. The Tindler swindler, Miguel says. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So average losses here are around $100,000 in DL cases, which I think I said on the last slide. Some FBI stats. So 20,000 US citizens were victimized in 2021, amounting to about $1 billion total. And then according to a Business Insider report, 67% of victims are single women aged between 25 and 40. Yeah, so a lot of victims don't like to report these cases. I worked a case with a victim in France, and they did not want, they didn't tell anyone what had happened to them. They didn't tell their parents. They didn't tell their friends other than the people they had asked money from. They felt so much shame about it. It took them a while to report what happened, and then ultimately for them to find us. And I found that was kind of a typical response. People don't recognize, it's sort of like the slow realization of, oh my gosh, something's wrong. Something doesn't feel right, but I love this person, or I trust this person. I know this person, I've talked to their family, but something just, something is starting to feel wrong after a year or 2 years. And then at that point, most of their money is gone. They'll get dumped essentially when they can no longer give any more money, or they break up with whoever it is who's victimizing them, right? Whatever call center. And they might sit on it for 6 months or so and just kind of consider what happened. Not everyone reports right away. So we would get reports going back to like 2017, 2018 as well. So keep that in mind. Hi, Tony, welcome. So this is kind of the life cycle of what happens here. You're going to have someone is going to initiate contact with you. When you're trust, you're going to deposit. They might let you withdraw a little bit of funds at a certain point in time, and you'll keep investing. And there are different ways to get you to keep investing. One tactic is to say, oh, well, you've got like, $120,000 in your account. So you would log into your account and you would see $120,000 there, right? Maybe you invested 10. And after about 4 months or 6 months, you see 120, you're like, wow, this is really good. And they're like, yeah, but we've got to now pay taxes on it. So if you could just send us, another $15,000, like we'll get those taxes done, and then you can go ahead and make your withdrawals, right? So there might be some negotiation back and forth, and the person's like, well, I don't have 15. So the exploiter might say something like, well, I'll pay 7, right? I'll cover 7 if you can cover the rest, or something like that, because we're so close. So the person will continue to pay in more and more and more. And it's quite shocking. The numbers go up quickly on this. All right. So this is Lucy's story. Someone reached out to her over LinkedIn and said they were an employee of Tesla, and that actually he reached out to her because he noticed that they came from the same hometown. Pretty cool. So they started talking on a different messaging app, and after a few weeks, she began to invest. Initially, her deposit was $100,000 directly to this person. Now, she was paying into an account that she thought she was in control of on this website, when in reality, she was directly depositing funds into this person's address, cryptocurrency address. So she did go to withdraw some profits. And of course, the platform was like, hey, you've got to pay some taxes and we've got our own fees here. And at the time, she's like, well, that seems reasonable. But things snowballed, and quickly over the course of a month, she ended up paying an additional $950,000. So her entire life savings, her entire net worth into the scam. This is not unusual. So lessons learned here. Education, even now amongst retail, is low. I should have added like regulators as well. But the focus here, I think, is probably retail investors, or people who are being victimized and perhaps the most vulnerable. New investors, and even not new investors, actually, people who have invested in fiat, right? Or invested in stocks might come into cryptocurrency and they see in the news all of these gains, right? They log into Twitter and they see like numbers on Reddit, numbers, and they're like, wow, oh, this seems really easy. And in a bull market, maybe it is, I don't know. But they don't know how to recognize a cryptocurrency scam. So just because someone does know how to invest or they don't know how to invest doesn't mean that there's a direct connection or correlation in recognizing when someone's being exploited, right? Demand for investigation services far beyond our resources, high demand from universities and cryptocurrency education and collaboration, right? They definitely want to get their students trained up who are in fin crimes and cyber and all of that. So Ciphertrace does help schools do that. I do that as well. I forgot to mention, I also teach at my alma mater, blockchain analytics. So good course. And then unfortunately, people are re-victimized. So what often happens is after the person recognizes they've paid into a scam, they've been scammed, they're going to cut off contact or get in an argument with the person who's victimized them. And then maybe a couple of weeks or a month later, they'll get a message from a recovery firm offering their services and saying, hey, if you have $1,000, we've noticed, we picked up your case. We've got like 150 other cases just like this. We're going to go after them all at the same time. We just need to make sure we have the resources. So if you can give us $500 or $1,000, we're going to go ahead and get your money back. So they'll sign some bogus contract, pay them money, and then get scammed again. And we've had people get scammed 2 and 3 times. That's not unusual. Some of these recovery firms that contact them are, it's the same group of scammers who initially made contact and victimized them. But there are other recovery firms out there that are dubious at best. So do a search in Google or Brave or whatever your browser is, whatever you're using, and kind of look at these and poke around and see what you see. Who looks legitimate? Who doesn't look legitimate? It's not always so easy to tell. And even for us at Ciphertrace, it's not always so easy to tell. So there are some things that might stand out, some red flags. But if the website's super clean, right, you're gonna have to have a meeting and like pull out from people like actually where the company is and their skills, and if they're looking to victimize victims or actually do good work. This is a very tricky area right here. All right. Yes, definitely. Yes. Okay. I'm getting a bunch of DMs. Thanks, guys. I'm gonna put I'll put my email in the chat here, and my LinkedIn when I can grab that in a minute as well. Feel free to connect. And I'll try to respond to all of you who have DM'd me. Thank you very much. And yeah, we won an award at MasterCard, yay, but we didn't get money for the program, boo. So this is why I'm kind of pitching to you guys, If you have thoughts, ideas of ways of collaboration or how to kind of bring this back to life, ideally, like I think there's a way to make this program like self-funded. Like I think we can pay for. I like just blank the word of whatever that is, whatever word it is I'm looking for. I can't remember, but it can pay for itself. And I think there's a way to do that and still create opportunities for financial crime students and people who are longtime TradFi AML, right? Want to get into cryptocurrency. Really cool career path opportunity here to help people out and get those skills yourself. So thank you.